On the morning of September 13, 1987, at approximately 7:08 hours, a 911 call was placed from the residence of Mrs. Darlene Reese, age 48, located at 2128, Kendall Court, a suburban cul-de-sac in Dayton, Ohio. Mrs. Reese reported finding a human head, somebody's head, in a bedroom closet belonging to her son, 20-year-old Curtis D. Reese. The call log noted extreme distress in the caller's voice. She stated, "It's not Curtis. It's someone else, someone I don't know." Patrol units from Montgomery County Sheriff's Office arrived at 7:15. Officers Gregory Voss and Nina Haskins made initial contact with Mrs. Reese at the front door. She was wearing a nightgown, barefoot, visibly shaking, and repeatedly muttering, "I didn't raise a monster." She led officers through the living room and down the hallway to a small bedroom at the rear of the home. Curtis Reese stood in the far corner of the room, fully dressed in a gray t-shirt and jeans, with his hands at his sides. He made no attempt to flee or speak. Officers instructed him to sit on the bed and remain still. He complied without protest. The closet door was ajar. Inside, on the second shelf above a stack of folded sweatshirts, was the severed head of a Caucasian adult male. The head was upright, partially wrapped in a plastic grocery bag, loosely knotted at the base. Strands of dark brown hair protruded from the plastic. A dried blood trail was visible on the interior wall of the closet, descending approximately 6 inches before halting, suggesting the head had been placed after bleeding had mostly ceased. The closet's interior emitted a distinct metallic odor, overlaid by the faint scent of household disinfectant. The room otherwise appeared orderly, bed made, desk cleared, floor vacuumed. No immediate signs of a struggle or forced entry. Deputy Haskins read Curtis his rights and detained him without resistance. According to her body cam transcript, Curtis asked only one question during handcuffing: "Is it still looking at you?" He did not elaborate. Mrs. Reese remained outside on the porch under supervision. She told Officer Voss she had entered her son's room that morning to collect laundry, as she did every Sunday. When she opened the closet to retrieve a basket of towels, she noticed the bag and assumed it contained meat. When she touched it, she felt the shape of a human ear and stepped back. She described a sensation of cold horror and immediately ran to the kitchen phone. Crime scene unit arrived at 7:42 hours. The head was photographed in situ, then removed under direction of the on-call coroner, Dr. Eli Horner. The decapitation was clean at the upper cervical spine. No blood was found elsewhere in the room apart from the immediate closet area. CSU noted that bleach had been used on the bedroom floor. Faint circular streaks were visible under alternate light source inspection. Curtis was transported to county holding at 8:10 for further questioning. No identification was found on the severed head or in the bedroom. No missing persons reports in the county matched the general description. The male victim appeared to be between 25 and 35 years old. The body to which the head belonged was not located at the scene. Officers began a full sweep of the property and surrounding block for any indication of additional remains or evidence. The investigation was now focused on 3 questions: who was the victim? Where was the rest of the body? And why had Curtis Reese placed the head in his closet, with full knowledge his mother would find it? Following the recovery of the severed head from Curtis Reese's bedroom closet, the Montgomery County Coroner's Office began immediate forensic examination at 9:40 hours on September 13, 1987. Dr. Eli Horner conducted the preliminary assessment. The head was that of a Caucasian male, estimated age between 28 and 35 years. Dark brown hair, straight, approximately 3 inches in length. No visible facial injuries aside from the severed neck. Eyes closed manually. Mild livor mortis present under the jawline. No tattoos or dental anomalies visible externally. X-rays were ordered to assist in identification. The neck severance was clean, consistent with use of a fine-toothed cutting instrument. No ragged tissue or sawing marks suggested panic or haste. A partial contusion along the right cheekbone was noted, possible premortem impact. Tissue samples were preserved for toxicology and DNA comparison. The head was classified as removed post-mortem with deliberate technique. Simultaneously, fingerprint extraction from the victim's left index and thumb was successful. By 15-20 hours, the prints matched a 1985 misdemeanor arrest record out of Cincinnati, Victor Lane Cruz, age 31. Occupation, part-time house painter and handyman. No felony convictions. Last known address was a rental unit on Wayne Avenue, Dayton. No missing persons report had been filed in his name. Detectives visited the listed address at 1705. The building manager confirmed Victor Cruz had lived in Unit 2B but had not been seen for, maybe a week. Rent had not been paid for September. The unit was unlocked, officers conducted a cursory sweep. No signs of struggle, but a single red t-shirt and a pair of size 10 men's sneakers were located beside the bed. A used takeout container, dated September 5, was in the trash. No blood, weapons, or drugs found. Neighbors recalled seeing Victor speaking with a younger man on September 6. No positive ID made, but the description, tall, pale, short blonde hair, was consistent with Curtis Reese. Curtis was interviewed at the county holding facility at 1840 hours. Present were detectives Alan Meeks and Ruth Delano. Curtis remained calm but refused to answer direct questions about Victor Cruz or how the head came to be in his closet. When asked if he knew the man, he nodded. Asked how Victor had died, he replied, he needed to go quiet. Further inquiries met with silence. Detectives noted Curtis showed no signs of intoxication or active mental distress. He maintained eye contact, responded clearly, and displayed neither remorse nor agitation. His demeanor was described as cold but not unstable. A search warrant was executed for the Reese residence that evening. The garage yielded a blood-stained sheet wrapped in a tarp, wedged behind boxes of old furniture. Serology confirmed the blood was human, type B positive, matching Victor Cruz's medical records. Additionally, a hacksaw with trace blood residue was found beneath the basement stairs, alongside a pack of unused plastic drop cloths. Curtis remained in custody on suspicion of homicide, pending further forensic analysis and recovery of the remaining body parts. His mother, Darlene Reese, was released into temporary care of relatives. Officers noted she appeared genuinely unaware of her son's involvement in any violent act. She repeated during formal statement, "I never saw him angry. Just, quiet. Always too quiet." By the morning of September 14, 1987, law enforcement had recovered a head, partial evidence of dismemberment tools, and a suspect who did not deny involvement, yet refused to explain it. The torso and limbs of Victor Cruz remained missing. The motive behind the killing was entirely unclear. Curtis Reese had given no explanation, only the unnerving statement, "He needed to go quiet." By September 14, 1987, Montgomery County investigators prioritized the recovery of Victor Cruz's remaining body parts. Curtis Reese remained in custody, providing no further statements. A formal request was filed for psychiatric evaluation, citing his unnervingly detached demeanor and monosyllabic responses. He declined legal counsel, stating only, "I don't need one. I already did it." Based on the discovery of the tarp-wrapped sheet in the garage and trace materials found on the hacksaw, CSU officers launched a forensic trace effort around the Reese property. Luminol testing was performed in the garage and basement with partial results. Streaks consistent with blood transfer were found on the garage floor near the shelving wall, as well as small arterial splatter inside a nearby trash can. However, no evidence of bodily remains. A fresh clue came from refused pickup records. Waste management logs showed that on September 8, a private garbage collection had occurred at Kendall Court due to a temporary route shift. Investigators contacted the contracted landfill in Brookville, Ohio. With cooperation from site staff, detectives and forensic teams searched the relevant disposal sector, marked from deliveries made between 9 o'clock and 1300 hours that day. On September 15, at 11:12 hours, the torso of Victor Cruz was recovered, tightly sealed in a second contractor-grade black trash bag. Legs and arms had been removed. The torso bore 2 precise incisions, at the shoulders and at the hips, each consistent with the hacksaw discovered in the Reese home. The chest cavity had been rinsed with an unknown liquid, later confirmed to contain bleach and detergent compounds. A paper towel was recovered from the same bag, heavily stained and bearing partial fingerprints, positively matched to Curtis Reese. No limbs or hands were found in the same sector. Search continued for another 48 hours without further remains being located. Authorities assumed that Curtis had disposed of the limbs separately, perhaps over several days or in alternate receptacles. The official coroner's report dated September 16 noted the following. Name, Victor Lane Cruz. Cause of death, sharp force trauma to the neck and chest, resulting in exsanguination. Manner of death, homicide. Estimated time of death, between 2200 hours and 2330 hours, September 6, 1987. Additional notes, no defensive wounds. Victim appears to have been caught unaware or restrained prior to attack. A single deep cut through the right subclavian artery was determined to be the fatal wound. Meanwhile, investigators reconstructed Curtis Reese's activities during the week of the murder. Surveillance video from a local hardware store dated September 5 showed him purchasing duct tape, gloves, and 2 packs of heavy trash bags. Receipts confirmed his visit at 16:18 hours. On September 7, he was seen at a self-service car wash near Route 35. The vehicle used, his mother's 1981 Buick Century, had since been impounded and examined. Trace evidence in the trunk included human hair, dark brown, matching Victor Cruz, bleach residue, and a single fingernail fragment lodged in the carpet lining. Neighbors were re-interviewed. One individual, Ronell Green, age 62, living 2 doors down, recalled hearing a whirring or scraping sound, like a saw, late on September 6, around 11 p.m., but assumed it was someone working on furniture. Another neighbor mentioned seeing Curtis dragging a bundled tarp from the back door to the garage early on September 7, but thought it was old bedding. Curtis was re-interviewed on September 17, this time in the presence of a court-appointed public defender. Asked again why he had killed Victor Cruz, he answered, "He talked too much." Pressed further, he added, "He wanted to leave, but I wasn't done. So I made it stop." No personal connection between Reese and Cruz was firmly established. No known shared history. No digital correspondence. The nature of their interaction, how they met, why Cruz entered the Reese home, and what occurred prior to the killing, remained speculative. By late September, prosecutors had enough evidence to pursue murder charges. The psychological motive remained obscured behind Curtis's cryptic statements. A young man with no criminal history had decapitated a stranger in his home, stored the head in his closet, and watched without emotion as it was found. The deeper question was not whether he was guilty, but what had brought him to such a precise, composed act of violence. By September 21, 1987, Curtis Reese had been formally charged with first-degree murder in the death of Victor Cruz. He was held without bail at the Montgomery County Detention Center, pending psychiatric evaluation and pretrial hearings. Prosecutors filed under Ohio Revised Code Section 2903.01, citing aggravated murder with prior calculation and design. No plea had yet been entered. Judge Daniel Ellsworth ordered a psychological competency assessment under Rule 11 of the Ohio Rules of Criminal Procedure. The examination was carried out by Dr. Warren Ivins, a forensic psychiatrist with the Miami Valley Psychiatric Center. Curtis was interviewed over 3 sessions between September 23 and September 25. Dr. Ivins' preliminary report, dated September 26, 1987, concluded that Curtis Reese was competent to stand trial. He demonstrated a high-functioning capacity for abstract reasoning, retained memory, and understanding of court procedures. However, the report also noted distinct traits consistent with schizoid and obsessive-compulsive personality features, including flattened affect, disassociation from social norms, and rigid self-isolation. In his sessions, Curtis spoke in a calm, quiet voice, often pausing before responding. When asked about Victor Cruz, he said, "I liked how he talked, but he wouldn't stop. I wanted him quiet. I thought maybe if I kept the head, it would stay quiet. But it didn't." Dr. Ivins asked Curtis if he felt remorse. He replied, "I don't feel things like that. I just needed it to be clean." Asked to clarify, he described Victor's body as something that had to be reduced to parts. "There's too much in the whole thing. Too much noise." The psychiatrist described this response as indicative of flattened emotional response and impaired empathy, but not necessarily psychosis. Curtis was not delusional, did not display hallucinations, and understood the legal consequences of his actions. The report concluded, the defendant exhibits moral detachment and functional planning. These are not the characteristics of insanity under Ohio law. Meanwhile, the district attorney's office compiled the physical and testimonial evidence. In addition to the severed head, torso, blood-soaked materials, hacksaw, and matching fingerprints, the prosecution emphasized the methodical nature of the disposal. The taped plastic wrap used to seal the torso bag had been measured and cut evenly. Curtis had worn gloves and taken steps to remove prints and organic fluids. The bleach found on the torso and in the bedroom confirmed post-crime sanitization, a sign of consciousness of guilt. Investigators revisited Curtis's history. His school records showed average performance but a complete absence of extracurricular involvement. Teachers from Lincoln High School recalled him as quiet, unervingly polite, rarely made eye contact. He had no work record, no driver's license, and no social affiliations beyond minimal public interaction. His mother, Darlene Reese, confirmed that he rarely left the house and lived mostly in his room. No history of institutionalization, but a single note from a school counselor dated 1983 recorded a concern that Curtis exhibited detachment and conversational avoidance when pressed about emotional topics. In late September, the DA offered the defense a plea agreement, life imprisonment without parole in exchange for full disclosure of motive and body disposal. Curtis declined. His attorney stated, he does not wish to negotiate. He wants the process to run its course. In a handwritten note to the court dated October 2, Curtis wrote, "This was not about hate. I didn't hate him. I just didn't want the rest of him anymore. The voice was better than the person." The court scheduled a preliminary hearing for October 13. Media attention increased, with local headlines using terms like "closet killer" and "the quiet boy." The public, especially in Dayton's Riverside neighborhood, responded with confusion and fear. Rumors spread that the killing was part of an occult act, or that Curtis had been part of a death cult. Investigators repeatedly stated there was no evidence supporting such claims. What remained was the stark reality: a young man, intelligent and coldly lucid, had killed a man he barely knew, severed the body with precision, and stored the head in a space inches from where he slept. No rage. No history of abuse. No ideological drive. Only silence, and a desire to keep it. The preliminary hearing for State of Ohio v. Curtis Reese convened on October 13, 1987, in Montgomery County Municipal Court. Presiding Judge Daniel Ellsworth opened proceedings at 9:04 hours. Security presence was increased due to public interest and media attention. Roughly 24 spectators were seated, including family members of Victor Cruz and local reporters. Curtis Reese was led into the courtroom in standard county inmate attire. Observers noted his appearance as subdued, composed, and expressionless. He sat with hands folded in his lap, flanked by defense counsel Charles Edlin. He did not speak unless addressed directly and made no eye contact with those in the gallery. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Lynn Farrell, presented a condensed version of evidence: the severed head in Reese's closet, the torso located in a Brookville landfill, the hacksaw with matched blood evidence, and a statement by Reese himself, confirming his role. Farrell emphasized the calculated nature of the act, from the purchase of materials to the cleaning of the crime scene. Witnesses for the prosecution included Dr. Eli Horner, who confirmed the post-mortem nature of the decapitation. Detective Ruth Delano, who recounted Curtis's demeanor and statements. Crime scene technician Molly Pierce, who processed the closet and garage. Delano's testimony received particular attention. She stated that when Curtis was shown a photograph of the victim's head, he asked, "Do you think he looks peaceful?" She described the tone not as mocking, but as genuinely curious, like he really wanted to know. The defense did not contest the facts but argued that Curtis's mental condition warranted further psychiatric review. Edlin asked the court to consider a full psychological competency hearing and temporary commitment. He cited the findings of Dr. Warren Ivins, who noted Curtis's emotional flattening and dissociative traits. Judge Ellsworth declined to delay the proceedings further, ruling that existing evaluations were sufficient and that Curtis was mentally fit to continue. The court recognizes his detachment, Ellsworth stated, but does not find cause to question his comprehension or culpability. At the conclusion of the hearing, the judge found probable cause to bind Curtis Reese over for trial on all charges, including first-degree murder and abuse of a corpse. Arraignment was scheduled for November 3, 1987. As he was escorted from the courtroom, Reese turned briefly toward the prosecution table and said, under his breath, "It's quieter now." His attorney declined to interpret the remark. Reporters captured the quote in the next day's Dayton Herald under the headline, "The Killer Who Likes Silence." The trial of Curtis Reese commenced on November 30, 1987, in the Montgomery County Court of Common Pleas. Jury selection was completed in 2 days, with 12 seated jurors and 2 alternates. The defendant faced a single charge of first-degree murder under Ohio state law, with additional charges for abuse of a corpse and tampering with evidence. Opening statements began on December 2. Assistant District Attorney Lynn Farrell described the crime as an act of quiet brutality, carefully arranged, coldly executed, and fully intentional. The prosecution's case rested heavily on the thoroughness of the evidence, forensic links between Reese and the dismembered remains of Victor Cruz, Curtis's own words during interview, the absence of any mental condition rising to legal insanity, and the methodical post-homicide behavior, which included body part concealment and scene sanitation. Witnesses for the prosecution included Dr. Eli Horner, who detailed the precision of the dismemberment and cause of death. Crime scene technician Molly Pierce, who described the recovery of the head and bleach-cleaned closet. Detective Ruth Delano, who repeated Reese's recorded statements and demeanor during booking. Neighbors who saw Curtis handling wrapped objects and using power tools late on the night of the murder. The defense, led by Charles Edlin, did not dispute that Curtis had killed Victor Cruz. Instead, they advanced a diminished capacity argument. Edlin argued that Reese lacked the emotional and social faculties to fully understand the weight of his actions. He called Dr. Warren Ivins to testify regarding Curtis's mental evaluation. Dr. Ivins described Reese as psychologically flattened, with deep affective detachment, but confirmed again that Curtis was not insane. He understood what he did. He understood it would result in death. He does not, however, process emotion or empathy in a typical human way. Curtis declined to testify in his own defense. He sat through the proceedings without visible reaction, often staring forward or downward. When shown photographs of Victor Cruz's remains, he neither flinched nor turned away. On December 14, after 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict, guilty on all counts. During sentencing, the court heard impact statements from Victor Cruz's sister and a cousin. They described Victor as generous, too trusting, and emotionally open. He would talk to anyone, said his cousin. He always gave people a chance. Neither could explain why he might have entered Curtis's home. When offered the chance to speak before sentencing, Curtis stood and said only, "I didn't do it to make him suffer. I did it because he kept filling up the room." Judge Ellsworth imposed the maximum sentence, life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, plus 5 years for evidence tampering and corpse abuse, to be served consecutively. The judge stated, "This court finds no pleasure in passing this sentence, but finds no hesitation. What you did was deliberate, grotesque, and irredeemable. Curtis Reese was remanded to the Ohio State Penitentiary in Youngstown. He offered no objection. Curtis Reese began serving his sentence at the Ohio State Penitentiary on January 3, 1988. He was assigned inmate number 334190, initially placed in the General Population Unit D before being transferred to Psychological Observation Unit C following concerns raised by intake staff over his persistent silence and flat affect. According to his institutional file, Reese did not speak to staff voluntarily during his first 76 days of incarceration. He ate all meals, followed instructions, and displayed no signs of aggression or disobedience. Guards described him as mechanical, hollow, and disconnected. He requested no reading material, made no phone calls, and received only one visitor, his mother, Darlene Reese, who arrived on March 21, 1988, and left in tears after 18 minutes. She never returned. Between 1988 and 1991, Curtis's behavior remained unchanged. He showed no disciplinary infractions and did not participate in any institutional programming, including anger management, religious services, or psychological counseling, despite repeated encouragement. Staff psychiatrist Dr. Leland Frisk noted in 1990. Reese is not psychotic. He is not delusional. He is simply vacant. Whatever emotional or cognitive rationale led him to kill Victor Cruz exists in a closed internal loop that we cannot penetrate. He has walled it off completely. In 1992, during a quarterly review, Reese finally spoke a single unsolicited sentence during his routine physical exam. The attending nurse asked if he had any medical concerns. Curtis answered, "It's easier now, without sound." By 1996, Reese's case became a subject of academic inquiry among forensic psychology programs, cited in several journals for its profile of a detached, high-functioning, non-psychotic killer whose act appeared motivated not by anger or gain, but by an overwhelming aversion to another human's presence, or voice. One paper from Case Western Reserve University described him as a rare example of interpersonal erasure, not the desire to destroy a person, but to reduce them to silence and stillness. He never appealed his conviction. On October 9, 2002, at the age of 35, Curtis Reese was found unresponsive in his cell during morning rounds. The cause of death was cardiac arrest, confirmed by autopsy as natural. No contraband, medication, or self-harm was involved. His body was cremated at state expense. No next of kin claimed his remains. Victor Cruz's surviving family declined to comment for the record following Reese's death. A brief obituary for Victor appeared in a Dayton community paper on the 20th anniversary of his murder. It read in part, "He talked too much," they said. "But we're still listening." The Reese case remains sealed in Ohio's criminal archive under restricted access, due to the psychological material and the disturbing nature of the evidence. It is occasionally referenced in law enforcement training as an example of a completed, non-serial, pathological homicide committed in silence and with surgical calm. No evidence ever emerged that Victor Cruz provoked or threatened Curtis Reese in any way. Their interaction, how they met, what was said, died with both of them. The only lasting trace was a severed head in a closet, and a young man watching quietly as it was found.